Kelvin Mungai. I will start off by taking you through the newspapers as I always do. Then later on I will be having my guests on set and we will be having a political discussion surrounding what has been happening politically, well, at least currently, or what is actually happening. That is what is being said, what is being done, and how that affects the political landscape ahead of the August 9th general election. Welcome very much to the Morning Dew. Now, let us start with the Daily Nation. The main headline reads, Storm over Igathe. Polycarp, who quit as Nairobi Deputy Governor after just 4 months in office in 2018 and retreated to the swanky corner offices of the corporate world, has bounced back into the political theater, causing a commotion that threatens the unity in Raila Odinga's and President Uhuru Kenyatta's Azimio. That is a story on page 4 and 5. Then there is a Mulembe ultimatum right next there to the picture of Polycarp. It reads, reading what he said was the Nairobi Mulembe Nation irreducible minimums at a meeting attended by Tim Wanyonyi yesterday. Former Nairobi Town Clerk Philip Kisia said the community must be assured of the governor and senate seats in Nairobi, as well as 5 parliamentary seats and 24 wards. They also want 5 cabinet slots in finance, health, roads, water and environment. Now, a bit of a breakdown. No time to waste. A day after reports of a state house brokered deal, Igathe was already on the campaign trail yesterday with a coterie of leaders whipped to sell his candidature. And no man to waste. Westlands MP Tim Wanyonyi says he will not deputize a political novice, handing Kenyatta and Odinga a major headache a day to the nominations deadline. And a truce unto waste. Reports indicate that former Kibwezi MP Philip Kaloki has now been fronted as Igathe's running mate, while Wanyonyi will be asked to vie for the Senate seat. And millions gone to waste. Igathe's suddenly entry into the fray is likely to make a mockery of the fortunes spent on the campaign trail by Ali Birds, Ngatia, Kananu, and Kagure. Then more stories. How prisons cleaner spent 257 million windfall after supplying air. This is of course a shocking story that has taken the country by storm. In shocking new revelations, this man, who is at the center of a corruption investigation at the State Department of Prisons, used part of the loot to buy property for a colleague who worked in the accounts section. That is a story on page 2 and 3 for Anatomy of a Prison Heist. And rebels of the rift against all odds. Nobody perhaps illustrates the odds of riding a popularity wave like this man Alfred Keter, who on Tuesday night overcame a host of hurdles, including intra-party hostilities, to win the UDA Nandi Hills MP ticket. That is a story on page 4 and 5. And Onyango Obo, why fists and chairs fly during nominations. That is a story on page 16. And on page 10, you may want to put down that peanut butter, because cancer-causing toxins found in peanut butter and fruit juices. Get this, again. So it's not the first time that has happened, but, well, it says that they have been found in there again. Let us start with the story of the prisons worker who used part of 257 million pay for supplying nothing. An employee who allegedly received 257 million from the State Department for Correctional Services for supplying nothing used part of the loot to purchase property for a colleague who worked in the accounts section. According to documents filed in court by the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, Mr. Eric Kipkurui Mutai withdrew 133 million in cash for unspecified purposes. He then used the balance to buy property including land in Kericho, Kipchimchim, which he registered in his father's name, the documents further show. Mr. Mutai, a cleaning supervisor, is believed to have received the money through 7 trading companies which allegedly conducted business with prisons in Nairobi. A firm named Unique Supplies is said to have received 73 million shillings. Homex Logistics received 62 million shillings. Hygienic Ventures 51 million. And Nerima's General Agencies 22 million. White Unicorn Logistics 10 million shillings. Trekris Services 13.6 million. And Falcon Logistics received 13 million. Through Falcon Logistics, the court documents show the suspect credited a sum of 6 million shillings into the accounts of Signature Cars after purchasing a vehicle and paying 675,110 shillings to Jubilee Insurance. Now, through Unique Supplies, Mr. Mutai used 8.5 million shillings to purchase a house from the Housing Finance Company of Kenya for colleague Moses Sirengo, that is principal accountant. The documents further show Mr. Mutai is said to have used 15 million shillings to pay Matthew Kirago and Koskei Cheruyot 2 million shillings, and Ephraim Wanjohi, who was paid 5 million shillings for business premises and land. Now, there is more to that story on page 2 and 3 of the Daily Nation, as well as a bit of a breakdown on page 3. That is more breakdown. There is a more detailed breakdown on page 3 for each one of those companies and how the money was spent. So do grab a copy of the Daily Nation, get to take a look at that story. It is quite interesting. Now on page 4 and 5, Igathe's entry into Nairobi governor race rocks Azimio. The former Nairobi Deputy Governor Polycarp Igathe's entry into the governor race has sparked a storm in Azimio, even as he set off his campaigns yesterday amid reports of a new city power lineup. The man, who unceremoniously quit as deputy governor in 4 months in 2018 and retreated to the swanky corner offices of the corporate world, has bounced back into the political theatre, causing a commotion that threatens the unity in the coalition party on whose ticket Mr. Raila Odinga, backed by President Uhuru Kenyatta, will vie for the presidency. On the second day since reports of a State House broker deal, Mr. Igathe, who has been lurching from one top job in blue chip firms to another, was already on the campaign trail, with a coterie of leaders reportedly whipped to sell his candidature to secure City Hall, which has been jointly run by the county and the national government since the ouster of Mr. Mike Sonko, whom Mr. Igathe abandoned, saying it was difficult working with him. Now, of course, there is a question here. The pair-up of Polycarp Igathe and a politician failed before. So will it work this time round? Will things be different this time round, considering that all those who are being nominated, or rather being favored to deputize him as Nairobi governor, are politicians? So will that pair-up work this time round, considering that it failed previously? Moving on, and yesterday Westlands MP Tim Wanyonyi, who had been marketing his bid for the Nairobi governor for months until the surprise deal asking him to step down, insisted he could not deputize a political novice, handing President Kenyatta and Mr. Odinga a headache a day to the nominations deadline. Following talks between Mr. Odinga and Wiper Party Chief Kalonzo Musyoka, reports indicate former Kibwezi MP Philip Kaloki has been fronted as Mr. Igathe's running mate, while Mr. Wanyonyi will be asked to contest for the Senate seat. A bit more details in there. Now, at a glance, this is the details in the inset. At a glance, man with a magic wand. Mr. Igathe's magic wand seemingly has propelled him from one job to another. He has been a man in the right place at the right time, attracting top jobs like a moth to light. Equity Group Holding Chief Commercial Officer has quit high-level positions 4 times between May 2017 and March 2020. Mr. Igathe has suddenly jumped to the front of the queue as aspirants Mr. Igathe has suddenly jumped to the front of the queue of aspirants eyeing the Jubilee Party ticket for the seat. Now, do remember that the question we're asking this morning is this. Will the pair-up of Mr. Polycarp Igathe and a politician, regardless of who the politician will be, will that pair-up work this time round, or will it fail as it has before? Will the pair-up of Polycarp Igathe and a politician work this time round, or will it fail as it has before? Send us your feedback on 23595 or on any one of our social media platforms, or you can send it to us through WhatsApp on the number on your screen, and we will be sure to sample some of your feedback at the end of this broadcast. Now, Raila backtracks on 6-piece vote call. This is quite interesting. Mr. Odinga withdrew calls for six-piece suit voting he made on Monday in Homa Bay and Tuesday in Mombasa. Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition presidential candidate Raila Odinga has backed down on calls to his Nyanza and Coast strongholds to vote for only Orange Democratic Movement candidates in the six-piece elective posts. Now, Mr. Odinga made a U-turn on the demand for the six-piece suit voting pattern he made on Monday in Homa Bay and on Tuesday in Mombasa, following an uproar within the coalition that brings together 26 parties. Now, speaking a day after President Kenyatta's camp in the coalition alongside other affiliate parties cautioned against such calls, Mr. Odinga assured members of the broader outfit of his commitment to their bigger cause, which he said is the presidency. For the record, I am an Azimio candidate. When I campaign around the country, I do so as an Azimio candidate, and I am not going to be biased in favor of ODM candidates. I will treat all candidates equally. Mr. Odinga told Azimio county coordinators drawn from 44 counties across the country during a strategy meeting in Nairobi yesterday. His concession is a big win for candidates of smaller parties in ODM strongholds who felt his call undermined their candidature despite them supporting his presidential bid. Now, yesterday there was the call by members of the Jubilee Party for Honorable Raila Odinga to drop the six-piece narrative, or rather the call for the six-piece voting system, because it seems as though he is in Azimio but is actively campaigning for ODM, and so that would have been a bone of contention within the coalition, but he has since dropped that. And so now the only other thing that seeks to, well, maybe split Azimio is the demands of Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka and the Nairobi issue that is now on the forefront. Now, on page 10, study reveals high toxin levels in food. Out of 10 samples of peanuts in the Kenyan market, 6 are contaminated above the Kenya and US minimum aflatoxin level, a study has shown. Also, significant non-compliance and contamination were reported in herbal health drinks, wheat, baby food, feed ingredients, maize, and fodder. The study by the International Livestock Research Institute under the Animal and Human Health Program, which was published last week, also revealed that animal feed was the least compliant, with 64% of the samples having total aflatoxin levels above Kenya and US standards. The study sampled 1,818 animal and human foods in leading laboratories in the country, concluded that humans and animals in Kenya appear to be chronically exposed to mycotoxin hazards. Mycotoxins are naturally occurring toxins produced by certain fungi and can be found in food. The contamination process a serious health threat to humans and livestock. So now, despite how much care we take, we cannot live without food, and it is worrying, especially when such toxins are found in the food that we consume, because then they go on to have a very severe effect on our own bodies later on in life when we are old and our immune systems are not as strong as they are while we're young. Now, Keter's shock win for an inspiration for rebels in Rift Valley. Now, once again, Keter's shock win and inspiration for rebels in Rift Valley. That is the story on page 12 and 13. Rift Valley rebels will draw inspiration from the improbable victory of Nandi Hills MP Alfred Keter in the United Democratic Alliance primaries to down allies of Deputy President William Ruto in the August 9th elections. The legislators overcame a well-oiled campaign mounted by Dr. Ruto's close allies, led by Nandi Governor Stephen Sang and MPs Oscar Sudi, that is for Kapseret, Didmas Baraza for Kimilili, and Caleb Kositanye for Soy, to claim the UDA ticket. Mr. Keter garnered 10,273 votes against his closest opponent, Mr. Bernard Kitur, who got 7,468 votes. Mr. Robert Chepkwony had 2,513 votes, and Miss Irene Chemutai got 388. Mr. George Tarus had 425, while Mr. Abraham Limo only managed 540. Now there is that story on page 12 and 13, and still on the same pages Raila holds talks with Kalonzo amid furrow of running mate selection. And again on page 13, Uhuru to pick candidates in Mount Kenya governor contests. Now there are more stories with more details in the Daily Nation, so I do highly recommend that you grab a copy of the Daily Nation, get to read through the stories in there, gather all the details, because you are part of this country, and as such you need to make your own independent decision on the issues that are happening. And how are the best to do that than to have the information at your fingertips? Now moving on to the Standard. The main headline reads, "All is gold for Raila as Ruto goes for new. Primaries end as voters renew mandates for close associates of Azimio leader Odinga, preferring tried and tested hands to work with him. But UDA nominations pick fresh faces, meaning that DP Ruto will have to work with a relatively younger team." That is the story on pages 20 and 21. Then on page 6 and 7, "Forget integrity, anyone can vie, IEBC tells court. Electoral team says it has no powers to ban candidates facing graft and other cases from seeking elective positions in August." Then on page 38, SA launches food relief as 488 die. And shipping on page 28, transporters to raise charges over fuel cost. And on page 3, mystery man suspected of killing athlete. Let us get into the Standard. Now a bit of, well, we may not, how about we don't look so much at the political stories in the Standard, but rather focus on all the other stories. Mystery of Ethiopian at center of athlete's killing. Athlete Damaris Muthe, whose decomposing body was found in a house rented by an Ethiopian, was preparing for a race in South Africa. As investigators tried to piece together details of what happened, sources described the Ethiopian as a mysterious athlete. Sources at the Lilies estate in Iten described the two as quiet. At the Newton Agency's management, where Muthe trained, her colleagues said she was making a comeback after a period of inactivity. They said her husband works in Qatar. Muthe got an opportunity to meet her husband in Qatar for about 12 hours when she was connecting the flight to Angola ahead of the April 4th race, said Eric Kogo, that is Muthe's coach. Coaches in Iten, one of the most preferred training destinations in the world, said the Ethiopian athlete, who is said to have fled the country, was not under any sports management like most others. More details there on page 3, as well as suspect escapes from police custody twice in 2 weeks, and group staff accused of forging land title. All very, very interesting. Now on page 4, Uhuru gives education scorecard as principals demand fee increase. President Uhuru Kenyatta yesterday extolled his government's achievements in the education sector since 2013. Speaking in Mombasa, President Kenyatta gave an overview of reforms undertaken by his administration. His government, the president said, had employed more than 120,000 teachers since 2013, increased their salaries, and provided them with a comprehensive insurance cover. The president said 6,470 classrooms to support the competency-based curriculum out of the planned 10,000 will be completed at the end of this month. That is, of course, a promise that we wait to see if it will come to completion, considering that as far as the education sector is concerned, the Jubilee government has also promised laptops, but that promise never came through. So, addressing more than 10,000 principals at the Kenya Secondary School Heads Association conference at the Sheikh Zayed Children Welfare Center in Mombasa, Uhuru said he had laid a firm foundation for the sector. Now, a bit of an inset, details on the inset. 120,000, that is teachers employed by President Kenyatta's government since 2013. The tutors were offered an insurance cover and their salaries adjusted. 6,470. Those are the classrooms that have been built out of the 10,000 planned to be completed at the end of this month. This will support the competency-based curriculum. And 288 billion, that is the current training budget for teachers in 2013, according to President Kenyatta. The training budget was 116 billion. Then, still on page 4, stop the blame game and give us answers, Uhuru tells critics. That was a very, well, it was not an open, such an open speech, but there are people who feel like the words in that, that was spoken by the president were directed towards the deputy president and his allies. So whatever you think, well, you may be right, you may be wrong. That is the best thing about words spoken. They are very open to interpretation. Now, IEBC says it will allow aspirants with integrity cases to vie. That is a story on page 7 of the Standard. The Electoral Commission has handed a reprieve to aspirants seeking elective seats in the August 9th polls, but have active court cases. The Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission said it cannot bar any politician with integrity issues from contesting in the general election. It said its hands were tied from locking anyone out based on a High Court decision in 2013 which cleared Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta and Dr. William Ruto ahead of that year's elections. That is the route. So despite facing charges of crimes against humanity at the International Criminal Court, the two were cleared to run as president and deputy president respectively. Through an affidavit sworn by the Commission's Director for Legal and Public Affairs, Mr. Crispin Owiye, IEBC said it had no reason to depart from or contradict the judgment, which found that any accused person is presumed innocent and can only be locked out from contesting if convicted in a court of law. That is the Kenyan law, ladies and gentlemen. So until some of these politicians are convicted guilty of the integrity cases that they have in the courts, they are cleared to run for elective seats. Now, I will be taking a short break, but do not go too far away because my guests are already here. And when we do come back, we will be engaging them on the hotspot segment of the Morning Dew. So do stay tuned for that conversation starting in a few minutes. See you then.